Hi there. Welcome to the overview of the Unofficial GRIC Action Sheets database. I'm your host, Leonard Bruce, and I'm the owner of this project. I started this project because I saw the community action sheets in the newspapers, but when I was trying to read through them, it was not easy to track items or search for things, and I ended up having to go through a whole bunch of different GRIN issues to be able to find things. So I figured the data's there, might as well transform it into something usable. So this is what happened when I did that. This is the unofficial GRIC action sheets, and I want to make that very clear. I have no relation with the GRIC government or CCSO in particular. This is something that I did as a passion project as a Gila River Indian community member. So with that said, I do want to point out in the beginning of this, before I get into the data, I have taken some liberties to make the system a little bit more standardized. That means I've trimmed some information, such as when caucuses happen, when breaks take place, or when the rules are suspended to add new items. I've taken a lot of that kind of fluffy background out of the items from the action sheets. And also, I've changed some of the outcome language, and I'll talk about the outcome column in a minute. But I've changed some of those items just for consistency. So with the changing of council secretaries over the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of different ways that they've notated the outcomes and they've notated the different items that have come through here. So I wanted to keep the language and try to standardize it as much as possible, but I've tried not to change the meaning of the outcome. So I will say with everything in this system, I would recommend that you check the source documentation in the GRIN archives before you just kind of rely on this information. Use it as a search tool, not as just the information itself. With that said, I do want to point out really quick, and I'll talk about this more, the GRIN number here. You'll be able to find where the item is located and which issue the action sheet is. Okay, so when I created this, I wanted to make it a search engine more or less to find information on items or other subjects, maybe even do legislative histories of some topics, and I'm hoping that it works for you. The system isn't perfect. There are a couple of errors and typos and just other stuff from moving the data from PDFs over to this format. So if you see any issues, please email me so I can take a look and correct them. Or if you just want to send me an email with the use case that you have and how you're using it, I'd love to hear that as well. So, okay, let's go over some of the different data elements in this, and then I'll show you some different tools and tricks you can use in Airtable as well. Okay, so what I tried to do is keep each of these tabs fairly the same and standardized. But before we get into the actual data in these tabs, I want to talk about which each of these are. So we have reports, resolutions, ordinances, unfinished business, and new business. And I'll talk about articles in these other two after I go over the data in the individual tabs. This follows the essential layout of the action sheets as they're shown in the GRIN. And just so everyone is on the same page about what each of these are, basically reports are usually just information only. There's someone coming to council and giving them information about some item or subject that they want to hear about. These are usually routed through committees. So there is a committee that's involved with these, but in the action sheets it doesn't show which committee these reports went through. So that's why that it's not reported here. The resolutions are basically written motions, and they contain a bunch of whereas clauses explaining why the resolution is needed, and then there's a therefore be it resolved, or just some other action that's taken as the result of the resolution being adopted. This is basically council making a written action that they want to do. Ordinances are essentially laws or regulations that are passed and put into place in the community. There's not very many of them because there's just not a lot of legal change that happens. It takes a while to get those gears moving. Unfinished business is usually when a topic is discussed during a meeting and there's no conclusion or any votes taken. The topic's usually added to the next meeting's agenda to be able to kind of finish it out. And this is also a place where if there's a reoccurring issue that keeps coming up, it kind of gets put on unfinished business. New business is something that the council has not heard before. Usually a new business item has not been previously discussed or previously acted upon. It's new. And usually these are set on the agenda before the meeting, but sometimes new issues can arise from council members during the meeting, and so some of these items can be added after the agenda is created. So I do want to say I don't know if GRIC follows the standard Robert Rules of Order in their meetings. They might have a modified version of it, but it's generally that's how it's set up in Robert's Rules, and so it's pretty easy to take a look at that. If you ever want to Google Robert's Rules of Order, you can see how those are set up. Okay, so with that being said, let's get into the actual meat and potatoes of this overview. So reports. Reports are broken into these categories. There's a report name, which is the name that was put on the action sheet for what the report is. There's the council date. This is the day of the council meeting that this report was heard. There's the GRIN number, and the numbering system that I use for this is essentially the month that it came out, the issue number, and then the year. So this is February. It is the first issue in February, and it is in 2009. In the early days, pre-2010, I think, they used to only have one issue of the GRIN per month, and in later parts of the database, you'll notice that there's a 3.2 or a 2.2, and that's because they started doing 2 issues per month. But if you ever need to go back and take a look at the source documentation, you can go back to this GRIN issue and be able to see what it looked like in the actual action sheet. There's also executive, so this will denote if it was in an executive session. And so an executive session, if you're not aware of it, is essentially a secret meeting. What it means is that the meeting is closed to the general public, and the information that's shared in that meeting should not be shared with the general public. That usually means there are disciplinary actions that can be taken if you talk about the items that are discussed in an executive session and you're present. So one of the things that is really important about executive sessions is it's based, again, on Robert's Rules of Order. It's not something that's just set up very easily. It is a motion that has to be passed by the majority of council. It's a motion, it's seconded, and then the majority of council has to agree to go into executive session. Typically the person who's making that motion is able to include any individuals or any groups that they want part of this. So a good example of this is usually with casino reports. They are going to be, as you can see, this commission general report. These are typically in executive session because this is related to our gaming. But with that being said, whenever I've been in council, usually they include community members to be able to be present to hear these items. Okay, so presenter, this is pretty explanatory. These are the people who are presenting, or the organizations that are presenting the information to council. The outcome is what happens at the end of it. So typically you'll notice the report is heard. Sometimes it's heard in an executive session. Every once in a while you'll notice that some of these reports go into new business or unfinished business because council wants to make some decisions on it. But typically at the end of these it is just report heard. And then topics, you'll notice this is blank. What I'm hoping to do is be able to add topics and tags so that it's easier to search for specific wide topics, just to be able to look for education or something else. And I'll show a bit how that's going to look when I get to the articles tab. Okay, so resolutions, and again, I tried to maintain the same structure of the data, so you'll notice name, council date, GRIN, etc. So I'm just going to talk about from this point on any new items that I am adding on here. So with this, the new fields are forwarding committee. So again, like I said in reports, sometimes it does go through a committee. Most of the time it goes through a committee, but those are not added onto the action sheets. So here you'll be able to notice that these are the people who the information is coming from. So this means that this resolution has gone through Education Standing Committee, and that's how it got routed into council. The committee recommendation, this is what the committee is forwarding it to council as. Typically you'll notice there's an approval, sometimes there's approvals with correction, sometimes these items do not come through committee, they come through some other process. And then finally you have other committees, and these are just other committees that the information has been routed through. So you'll notice here the forwarding committee was Government and Management Standing Committee, but it actually went to a whole bunch of other committees so that they could take a look at it before it got to council. And then finally there's the outcome. You'll notice that the committee recommendation doesn't always match the outcome. Sometimes even if the committee recommends approval, the outcome can be it gets dispensed or it gets defeated and removed entirely. and finally a blank topics. Okay, so ordinances. Again, these are laws or regulations that are put into place. This one does not have anything new in it. Again, it goes through forwarding committee, committee recommendations, other committees, etc. Going over to unfinished business. Unfinished business does have some new columns in it. So again, we go through the same items, council date, GRIN number, etc. to be able to find it. You'll notice the GRIN number is all messed up and the council date's all messed up. And I'll show you how to fix that in a minute. So again, these have outcomes, but with unfinished business and with new business, typically the outcome is tied to a motion. If it's not tied into a motion, sometimes it can just be heard and then maybe it'll come back on the agenda at a later date. Or sometimes the item will just be discussed and there won't be any action. But if there are any actions, it'll be typically under a motion. So these motions, you'll notice that there's 3 separate fields. Sometimes there can be multiple motions on one item. And so it's important to be able to go through and take a look at that. And I'll show you kind of how to research that a little bit more as well. And finally, new business is not any different. You'll notice there are, again, the dates and the GRIN numbers are all messed up, and we'll take a look at that and fix that in a minute. You'll also notice that there's motions. For here, you'll notice that there aren't motions on a lot of these. It's because it's sorted by outcome. So you'll notice that there are a lot of accepted and approved at the beginning of the agenda. And then once you get down all the way, there's a lot of these, all the way down into motions, you'll see that there are motions that are put on here. Okay, so what I want to show you really quick before we get into these other tabs are really fun, but I want to show you just kind of how this system would work. So with new business, there's a couple of cool things on Airtable that you can play with. And I want to play with, let's say, the filter first. So the filter is really useful if you just want to look for certain items. So let's say we want to only, and you can add multiple filters, which is really awesome. So you can add a filter, and we want to only look for the ones that have outcomes where it is a motion. So we can do a drop down, and we can go down and see only the motions on here. And if you wanted to, you could add a filter where you said we only want motions where there is an executive session. So we click that. So these are all of the items that have been in executive session and have a motion related to them. Right? And so you can always clear those filters out if you don't need them. The other thing that you can do is you can use group. Group is really useful, especially if you want to find information that is clustered together. So let's group by a council date. That way you can see every item that was on a specific council meeting. Again, this might be useful if you know of when an item was generally, but you don't know, and you know it was next to another item, but you're not quite sure which one it is. So if you can find, let's say, Hilo Crossing Community Schools written plan, you can also know what other items were seen on that date. You can also group by a whole lot of other things. You could group by presenter, although this gets pretty nuts, but that way you can see what presenters did what. But there's a better way to do this, so I'll show you that in a minute. And the other part of this is that you can sort. So again, we can go ahead and sort by council date. That way we can see this in order of when it happened. You could sort it by presenter, you can sort it by outcome, you can sort it however you want to. And something to keep in mind is this is a copy of the database that is kind of on, it's not going to be messed with. So you can do whatever you want with this copy, and it's not going to affect the original database. You can even copy this base up here. So hopefully you can see that. You can copy that base, and you'll be able to put this on your own Airtable account if you want to start tracking this stuff on your own, or adding information, or doing whatever you want with it. And finally, let me just show you this really quick, is this row height. If you do need to be able to see things better, you can always make the rows bigger and bigger to be able to see all of the information. I prefer it short because I like to see all the stuff at once. So the other thing is on this side, there's a quick dashboard. So when you go here, one of the things you can do is Control and F. So if you hold Control and you press F, you'll notice there's a little search here. So that search is great if you know that something is in a specific tab and that you want to find, or if you're just looking for, let's look for farm. And you can see that there's 67 instances where it says farm in this tab. You can go through and see all of those just like you would at a finding on any other system. Now the cool thing about this little dashboard over here is this looks through all 6 of these tables up here. So it'll look through reports, resolutions, ordinances, unfinished business, new business, and it'll look through articles as well, which we'll talk about in a second. So let's go ahead and say farm, and we'll take a look at that. Now what I will say is when you're doing that, you're going to see there's 125 records, which is a lot. But what you want to do is go over here and click this little box. This will get you into full screen, and that'll make it a lot easier to actually look through this stuff. So you can see which reports were related to farm, you can see what resolutions, you can see unfinished business, and let's say that we want to narrow this down a little bit better. We'll say farm and plan. And you'll be able to see which ones have both farm and plan in the name. Again, something that's useful if you need to drill down and find information over the whole database. Okay, so let's go into the last 3 tabs because I think this is going to be extremely helpful if you need to find things that are put together. So Airtable is a relational database, which is really useful. Articles, we're going to go into this and I'll show you what the articles look like. So what I did was when I went through all of this data is I tried to find GRIN articles that I thought were related to policy issues or just related to important issues in the community, cutting out a lot of the fluff pieces. If you want to make a copy of this database and add on to this, I would wholly support that and would love it if you shared it with me. But for my part, I just wanted to do a really quick piece of getting the major touch points in the community. So with this, you have the description, you have topics, and I'll talk about that in a second, the GRIN issue, so you can be able to look at what issue it's in, and then I also have the page number here. So when you go to the page number, you'll actually be able to see where this story was located in that GRIN issue. I also have notes that are just for myself. So for instance, on this, the Constitution Task Force, I have that it was originally created in 2006. And you can rearrange these columns if you want to be able to see things better. So that, we'll talk about the topics in a second. But this is essentially what I'm hoping to be able to get on topical lookups on these other tabs. Alright, so the other 2 tabs up here, presenter lookup. So this is a this shows the people who have done these reports, resolutions, etc. across all of these other tabs. So it kind of brings them all together. So let's say, for instance, you wanted to see what Alan Allery did over the years. You can expand, let me show you that in slower motion, I apologize. So you go over here and you can expand this record space. So you can expand this space and you can see all of the reports that he's done over the years. And as you go down, you can see the resolutions he's been a part of, the unfinished business he's presented, etc. And again, this might be useful for you because you want to know what kind of things a person has been a part of. So Alan, for instance, you can see that he's definitely been a part of Gila Crossing Community Schools in terms of annual reports. He's also done some work with the Sovereignty and Education Grant, and a whole lot of other fun stuff. Alright, so that's part of this. Again, so if you look down here, there's 936 records. That means there's 936 people or entities that have been part of work and presentations going to the community. So there's also topical lookup, and this is pretty bare bones right now. I'm hoping in further updates as I move along, we'll be able to get these all filled out so it'll be a little bit better. But for right now, let's say that we wanted to look at elections. So these are only GRIN articles, but these are GRIN articles that are related to elections. And you can go through here and you can see all of the ones that I at least put that are related to elections in the community. The other part, let's say that we wanted to look at gaming. So a lot of gaming is part of the TO casino, but you can see the different stories that have been published in the Gila River Indian News that are related to the Glendale Casino. You'll also notice that these little black question marks pop up from time to time. Again, those are some of the errors that happen moving this from a PDF over into this format. And that's really about it. So again, one of the things I'm hoping to do is add more topics to this. I'm also hoping to add more information as it comes out from community. I'm hoping this is really useful for you in whatever your endeavors are, and I hope that you send me an email or just drop me a line sometime in person and let me know what you think about it.